Peering into the everlasting gloom of the Arctic night sky, she was surrounded. Once Germany's pride of the seas, battleship Scharnhorst had sailed right into a trap. The hunter now became the hunted. Shells arrived without warning. Torpedoes followed seconds later. Not seen, only felt. The ocean itself shuddering as steel ripped through steel. Within the next 12 hours, she would cease to exist. And in the chaos of the Arctic darkness, the worst was still to come. So what exactly happened out here, in the freezing black of the Barents Sea, that turned one of Hitler's most feared warships into a wreck on the seabed before dawn could even break? In 2000, Norwegian research vessel MSHU Sverdrup II scans the seafloor 70 miles northeast of North Cape, Norway, in the Barents Sea. A distinctive dot appears on the radar, a grainy green blob measuring 170 meters long, and then another, 70 meters long. Could this be the wreck they had been searching for? Was this the missing battleship? In 1943, Hitler was furious. He declared to several admirals that Germany's navy was useless. The warships should be reduced to scrap metal. Little did he know, that's exactly what would happen. But Admiral Karl Dönitz knew the warships still had a purpose for the battle-weary German navy: to cut off supplies between Britain and Russia by intercepting Arctic convoys. Scharnhorst was ordered for the job. It was Germany's pride of the navy. Nicknamed Lucky Scharnhorst, she was the lead ship of her class. And at 770 feet long, she was an imposable presence in the icy Arctic waters. She was armed with 9 main guns, 12 secondary guns, a large anti-aircraft battery, 6 torpedo tubes, and protected by heavy armor. Despite her imposing presence in 1943, below the surface in the year 2000, she was almost unrecognizable. A heap of scrap metal, the very product Hitler had once hoped for. By 1943, she already had a string of accomplishments to her name: sinking a cruiser, 1 aircraft carrier, 2 destroyers, and several merchant ships, forcing the Allies to deploy heavy escorts against her. And on Christmas Day 1943, Scharnhorst found what she was looking for: a vulnerable convoy carrying supplies and weapons to the Soviet Union. But the convoy was not vulnerable. It was heavily protected by the best of the British Navy. Encrypted radio transmissions between German command had been intercepted and decoded by the Allies. They knew Scharnhorst was hunting them, and on Boxing Day, they were ready. It was 7:30 in the morning. The convoy decided to set up a trap for the German battleship, to lure it into unfamiliar waters. They divided their best attack vessels into 2 separate forces. Force 1, the Anvil, would shadow the unsinkable Scharnhorst, blocking its approach to the convoy. Force 2, the Hammer, approached Scharnhorst from the west, ready to cut off the Germans' escape. It was 9:30 in the morning. Combining their superior radar and the cracked Enigma code, the British fleet caught Scharnhorst completely by surprise. HMS Norfolk fired. The battle had begun. In command of the German ship was Contra-Admiral Erich Bay. He ordered the crew to scramble to their action stations, immediately firing back. And in the year 2000, evidence of that bloody battle was discovered. It lies locked away 1,000 feet below the Barents Sea. The Royal Norwegian Navy's underwater recovery ship, Tyr, sent down an ROV. This discovery had been a long time coming. Nobody had recorded the exact location of Scharnhorst's demise. The battle had been too brutal, too intense. The sinking too rapid. But after the Royal Norwegian Navy ran the battle through a simulator, she was finally located. Bubbles escaped the ROV as it descended into the darkness, its spotlight illuminating the water below in a blue-green hue. Then, out of the gloom emerged twisted metal and what looked like a hull. Upside down, covered with marine secretions and sea anemones. their tiny tentacles swaying in the current. All around it was total destruction. Scrap metal splayed across the seafloor, a haunting reminder that this ship didn't go down quietly. It fought to the bitter end. A shell hit Scharnhorst's forward radar, partially blinding them, hindering their ability to detect enemy ships as darkness closed in. Scharnhorst scored some hits of its own, damaging HMS Norfolk's radar and gun turret. But lucky Scharnhorst was surrounded. As the rover glided through the darkness, most of Scharnhorst's weaponry is crushed against the seafloor under the inverted ship. But the spotlight landed on something else. A gun turret that was heavily jammed, the shell damage clearly visible. It was 12:30 in the afternoon. With radar damaged and secondary guns taken out, the Germans had to rely on something else: their speed. She could power through the waves at 36 miles per hour. Highly maneuverable and efficient, she could outpace any ship. For the time being, the Allied support vessels could do nothing but shadow Scharnhorst as the distance between them opened up. They kept a close eye on her using their radar, a constant blip on the screen. But she was fleeing into a trap. Scharnhorst was cut off by HMS Duke of York. A shell tore through her armoured deck and demolished No. 1 boiler room. That was the turning point in the battle. It was 16:30. As the Norwegian rover carefully manoeuvred over the wreck site, the catastrophic damage became clear. This wasn't a wreck lying peacefully in the darkness. It was a murder scene. Metal was twisted and contorted, the debris field stretching far off into the darkness. Some parts of the hull were completely disintegrated, unable to be identified by experts on the surface. The pain this ship went through in its final 24 hours was clear to see. The German ship's propulsion system was severely damaged. Her biggest asset, her speed, was now compromised, and she limped towards port for repairs at just 12 miles per hour. The rover paused in the water, hovering for a moment, its spotlight angled at the ship's propellers. With the hull lying upside down, 4 large propellers were clearly visible. But they weren't all intact. One propeller shaft was distorted, rendering it useless. Conter-Admiral Bay must have known his time was up. The ship was now open to torpedo attack, unable to outpace and outmaneuver the rapidly advancing British. But he was determined to fight until the end. And even as she began listing heavily, Bay announced over the radio, "We will fight on until the last shell is fired." The ROV revealed the catastrophic damage below deck. Holes punched through the hull below the waterline, powerful, obliterating chasms that had smashed the metal like a rock through a window. What was more revealing about the intensity of the battle was the impact it had on Scharnhorst's armour. The Allies didn't know it, but their relentless shelling and direct torpedo hits had smashed through Scharnhorst's 32-centimetre Krupp armour. The battle continued as the night sky engulfed the Barents Sea. Sparks from the explosions on board Scharnhorst flew like fireflies into the darkness. Men jumped over the sides, plunging into the freezing waters below, their only means of escape. The entire ship was engulfed in thick, impenetrable black smoke, an eerie orange glow roaring inside like a blacksmith's forge. The rover revealed the true horror of the damage. 55 torpedoes were fired at Scharnhorst. And now, in the icy depths of the Barents Sea, it was clear to see just how dramatic those hits were. At least 2 of them demolished the battleship, likely triggering massive internal explosions. The bow was obliterated. As the rover hovered over the site, searching in the inky light, it moved away from the main hull, scouring the muddy sea floor, looking for more clues. And that's when they spotted it, the stern lying 120 meters away, completely separated from the rest of the ship. The final strikes had literally torn the ship apart, like ripping a piece of paper in 2. The raging fire and torrents of black smoke reported by witnesses confirmed the research team's suspicions. Those two torpedoes caused the rapid and uncontrolled sinking of Scharnhorst. At 1945, on December 26th, she was gone. But the real horror of war was still to come. The British remained silent. The battle was won. But knowing fellow sailors were still fighting for their lives in the icy, inky black waters below was nothing to be celebrated. The German screams and cries for help drifted over the water, muffled cries, wrapped in oil, frozen by the icy sea, stabbing them like knives all over the body. It took their breath away, gasping, spluttering, splashing. The British leaned over the sides of their ships, peering into the water, until all was quiet. A mournful silence hung in the air. Dutifully, destroyers Belfast and Norfolk moved into position to rescue survivors. They threw scrambling nets over the side, hauling the Germans on board. But many of the floating bodies didn't move. Face down in the water, they were already gone. Out of 1,968 crew, only 36 survived. Then came the shocking order: leave the survivors and retreat. There was a threat from German U-boats potentially hunting them from under the waves. With survivors still screaming to be saved, the British heaved the scrambling nets back overboard, switched off the searchlight, and steamed away. Those cries of desperation still plague the Allied soldiers today, their screams echoing in the night, begging for help, begging for mercy. But as the British sailed off, another sound cut through the Arctic night. No longer the cries for help, no longer the sound of desperation, but voices drifting across the black water. The sound of the Germans singing in the frigid darkness as their splashes died down. On a sailor's grave no roses bloom. A haunting sound,